It was nearing the end of the school year when my Year 8 geography teacher, let's call him Mr. G, told the class one day that we were going to play a game known as the trading game. This was how it was going to work. Firstly, the class was going to be split into 6 countries. There were 2 high-income countries, the US and UK, 2 middle-income countries, Brazil and China, and 2 low-income countries, Bangladesh and Malawi. Each country was assigned a table and a number of students. On each table was a stack of paper, some stationery like pens, rulers and scissors, and a reference sheet. The goal of the game was to earn as much money as you can for your country. To do this, you had to cut and sell as many paper shapes as you could to the World Bank, a table with 2 students, who would pay out the prices based on the reference sheet. The catch was that the tables weren't created equally. The US, for example, had 6 students, a decent supply of scrap paper, and enough stationery for everybody at the table. The UK, in comparison, had 3 students, a paltry supply of paper, but a ludicrous amount of stationery for the number of people they had. And then there was my table, Bangladesh, which had 6 people, a large stack of paper, 1 pair of scissors. Wait, is that it? Mr. G, I don't think you gave us enough scissors. Nope, he said. It seems like I gave you the right amount. If you need any more stationery, you're going to have to ask the other countries. With that, the game began, and the classroom immediately filled with paper cutting noises. All of us at the Bangladesh table kinda stared at each other blankly, asking, what do we do now? One of my classmates took the initiative and began ripping pieces of paper into rectangles with his bare hands. Nearly all of us, barring the one guy with scissors, started doing the same. Soon, players from the other countries were rushing to the bank to cash in their shapes, and we quickly followed suit. Here's £1,000 worth of rectangles, I said. I'll give you 400 for it. Excuse me? Most of these rectangles aren't cut properly. See, they don't meet the requirements in the reference sheet. But we don't even have a ruler. How could we possibly measure the rectangles? I headed back to our table to bring the bad news. Our shapes weren't good enough. We actually needed scissors, rulers, and pencils. Hi UK, I see you have a lot of scissors and rulers you're not using. I was wondering if you'd be willing to lend some of them to us. £10,000. What? £10,000 and we'll lend you a pair of scissors. But we just started, we don't have that kind of money. Well, go away then. But, okay, listen up everybody, the teacher announced. Because of the high volume of rectangles being sold to the bank, the price of them is now being reduced to £20 apiece. Circles are now £600 apiece. Suddenly, all of the countries changed tack. They were all in the circle game now. Well, except for us. We could barely manufacture a rectangle as it is. One of my classmates managed to produce 2 extra pairs of scissors. Where did you get them? I asked. He quietly gestured back at the UK table. But that's cheating, I said. He looked at me dismissively and carried on cutting. I pretended not to notice. The developing world wasn't the only one with problems though. As the developed world later learned, it was quickly running out of paper. But before any of them could remedy the issue, another event happened. Listen up, the teacher announced. A new resource has been discovered. The grey pieces of paper represent iron, and when cashed in with the bank, they pay double the price. We quickly checked our paper inventory. Good news, we had quite a bit of iron. But that was when the vultures began to circle in. Hi, I'm from the UK, and we'll give you a pair of scissors if you give us 3 pieces of iron. That's not remotely a fair deal. Okay, alright then, have fun ripping the iron with your bare hands. Wait. Give us 2 pairs of scissors. Give us 4 pieces of iron. Industrialization came at a steep cost. Our paper supplies were thoroughly plundered. But the price, we told ourselves, was worth it. Because for the first time in the game, we were able to manufacture shapes other than ripped rectangles. We were now able to keep up with the increasingly frenetic price changes the World Bank kept throwing at us, adapting our production based on new demands. There were lots of other events that happened, most of which I admit I don't remember. According to a teaching guide produced by Christian Aid for the game, link in the description, teachers can help create new trading situations. Some ideas they give include secretly giving paper to a country to simulate the discovery of a new ore deposit, encouraging richer countries to give out predatory loans to poorer ones, and taking away a country's scissors to simulate a general strike. One event I do remember happening involved Mr. G ominously approaching our desk. He looked at me and said, "Congratulations, you're now an immigrant. You're moving to the UK." With that, I was cruelly ripped apart from my Bangladeshi compatriots. Another one of my classmates was also taken away, forcibly relocated to the United States. The Brits were glad to take me in. After all, they had a manpower shortage throughout. Well, I guess this is my life now. So what shapes are we cutting? Squares, rectangles, circles? Kites. What do you mean by kites? I was directed to refer to the reference sheets. Wait, what do you mean by sheets? Why is there a second page? As it turned out, the UK and US were given a second reference sheet with different complex shapes. These shapes, such as kites, stars and trapeziums, paid substantially more than the ordinary shapes, and it seemed like no one else, apart from the UK and US, were even made aware of their existence. So while the rest of the world was frantically adjusting its supply chains to make whatever the World Bank was demanding next, the US and UK were making their own special shapes, knowing full well their limited supply wouldn't trigger a price change. After some time, Mr. G approached our table. "In 5 minutes," he whispered, "I'll be telling the entire class that the green paper represents uranium. They'll pay out 5 times the price when cashed in." We immediately checked our stockpile. We did, in fact, have some uranium. But we also knew 2 other things. Firstly, the Americans likely would have been told the same information. Secondly, the other countries likely would have uranium on their hands. Conclusion? Get as much uranium as possible before the Americans can. And time was ticking. 5 minutes wasn't a long time. What followed was a mad dash to other countries, disguising our purchase requests as just random stacks of paper which just so happened to contain their entire green paper supply. We made it out like bandits, shipping off boatloads of uranium back to the British Isles. It wouldn't take long for the others to learn of our deception. As the end drew closer, the atmosphere became more hectic. Around the last 10 minutes of the game, Mr. G unveiled a new piece of equipment. Attention everyone, a new technology has been invented. The guillotine. No Lily, not that guillotine, this one. For the low price of £3,000, you can buy the dibs. Words cannot express the joyous feeling of being able to manufacture large quantities of rectangular pieces of paper at an industrial rate. Measure, 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 cut, cut, cut. Run, 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 ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. When the dust settled and the game ended, we all counted our money and began tallying our results. It was then that our teacher threw one final curveball. There was a penalty for pollution. For every piece of paper we had on our table, we had to pay a penalty of £100. Okay, well, I guess Britain and America had to be punished somehow for our excessive consumption. Wait, can you clarify how the penalty is calculated? For every piece of paper, a country had to pay £100. So, if a paper were entirely unused, it would cost £100. If a piece of paper were cut, it would also cost £100. If a paper was cut into various shapes, which were then rejected by the World Bank, each rejected shape would cost £100.